The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the dark void like a giant metal city. 12 different alien races had built it together over 3,000 years ago. Inside its gleaming halls, the Galactic Council made decisions that affected billions of lives across the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the window of his ship, the UES Horizon, and looked at the beautiful station. He had been here many times before, always hoping for the same thing. Today would be no different. The humans would ask to join the council, and the aliens would say no. Jake was a tall man with brown hair and tired eyes. He had spent 15 years exploring space for Earth. He had seen wonders that most humans could only dream about. But he had also seen how the other races looked at his kind. To them, humans were nothing more than violent children playing with dangerous toys. The communication screen in front of Jake lit up. A face appeared that looked almost human, except for the blue skin and large black eyes. It was Ambassador Veltar, from the Zephyrian race. The Zephyrians could read minds, which made them think they were better than everyone else. "Captain Morrison," Veltar said, in a voice that sounded bored. "I suppose you are here for the same reason as always." "Yes, Ambassador," Jake replied. "Earth would like to request membership in the Galactic Council once again." Veltar made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Captain, we have been through this many times. Your species is too young, too violent, and too unpredictable. You destroy your own planet. You fight wars over small pieces of land. You cannot even agree among yourselves on simple matters." Jake had heard these words before, but they still made him angry. "We have changed, Ambassador. We have been peaceful for 20 years now. We have stopped fighting wars on Earth. We want to help make the galaxy a better place." "Peace for 20 years? Veltar shook his head. "We Zephyrians have known peace for over 2,000 years. The Korathans have not fought a war in 1,500 years. Even the warrior race of Valaxians put down their weapons 800 years ago. Your 20 years of peace is nothing to us." The screen went dark. Jake stared at his reflection in the black glass. Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. They were good people. They deserved better than to be treated like barbarians. Dr. Lisa Chen walked up to Jake. She was a small woman with short black hair and smart eyes behind thick glasses. She studied alien life forms and had become one of the best scientists in the fleet. "The same answer?" she asked. "The same answer," Jake said. "They think we are too dangerous to join their club. Maybe we should show them how dangerous we really are," said Commander Ryan Blake. He was Jake's second in command, a man who had once been a soldier before becoming a spaceship officer. His joke made a few crew members smile, but Jake did not find it funny. "That kind of thinking is exactly why they do not trust us," Jake said. "We need to prove we are better than they think." The ship's computer made a soft beeping sound. Lieutenant Jenny Walsh, the ship's pilot, looked at her screen with interest. "Captain, I am picking up a strange signal from the outer rim. It looks like a distress call, but it is very weak." Jake walked over to her station. The outer rim was the edge of known space, where few ships ever traveled. It was empty and cold, and full of dangers that most people preferred to avoid. "What kind of signal?" Jake asked. "I'm not sure, sir. It does not match any known language or communication system, but it is repeating the same pattern over and over again." Dr. Chen pushed her glasses up her nose the way she always did when something interested her. "Can you play it for us?" Jenny pressed a button and a strange sound filled the bridge. It was like music, but sad and desperate. It rose and fell in a pattern that seemed almost like crying. "I have never heard anything like that before," Lisa said. "It is definitely not from any council race." Jake made a decision that would change everything, though he did not know it at the time. "Set course for the signal. Let us see what we can find." "Sir," Ryan said, "we are supposed to return to Earth for our next assignment." "Earth can wait," Jake replied. "Someone out there needs help, and we are the only ship close enough to provide it." The UES Horizon turned away from Nexus Prime and headed toward the dark edge of the galaxy. As they traveled, the signal grew stronger. After 2 days, they found what they were looking for. It was a ship, but unlike any ship they had ever seen. It was huge, bigger than 3 Earth destroyers put together. Its hull was black as night and covered with strange symbols that seemed to move when you looked at them. The ship was dead in space. No lights, no power, no life signs. "My God," Jenny whispered. "What is that thing?" Dr. Chen was already running scans with her equipment. "The metal is not from any known source. The design is completely foreign. This ship is not from any council race." "Is it safe to board?" Jake asked. "I am reading no life signs, no radiation, no dangerous energy. But Captain, this ship is old. Very old, I would guess it has been floating here for hundreds of years." Jake looked at the mysterious vessel on his screen. Something about it made him feel cold inside, but his curiosity was stronger than his fear. "Suit up," he ordered. "We are going aboard." Within an hour, Jake, Lisa, and Ryan were floating through space toward the alien ship. They found an opening in the hull that looked like it had been torn open from the inside. Their lights cut through the darkness as they entered. The inside of the ship was like a tomb. Everything was covered in dust and ice. Strange machines lined the walls, their purpose unknown. But it was not the machines that caught their attention. It was the bodies. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They looked like insects that had grown to the size of humans. Their bodies were twisted and broken as if they had died in great pain and fear. "What happened here?" Ryan asked quietly. Dr. Chen was taking pictures and samples. "I need to study these remains, but it looks like they were running from something. Look at the way they are positioned. They were all trying to get to the escape pods." Jake found the ship's bridge. The alien computers were dead, but his engineer managed to connect a portable power unit. Slowly, information began to flow across the screens. What they found would have terrified the Galactic Council, if the Council had been smart enough to listen. The ship belonged to a race called the Kethmori. They had been explorers, much like humans, but they had found something in the deep dark between galaxies, something that hunted entire civilizations and ate them whole. The records were clear. A massive fleet was coming. They called themselves the Devourers, and they would arrive within months. They had already destroyed dozens of races, consuming their worlds and leaving nothing behind but empty space. Jake felt his blood turn to ice as he read the final entries. The Kethmori had tried to warn others, but no one would listen. Now they were all dead, and the Devourers were still coming. "We have to warn the Council," Lisa said. Jake nodded, but he already knew what would happen. The Council would not believe them. They would think it was another human trick to gain membership, and by the time they realized the truth, it would be too late. But he had to try. 3 months had passed since Jake Morrison brought the warning to Nexus Prime. 3 months of being ignored, dismissed, and treated like a liar. The Galactic Council had listened politely to his report, then filed it away with all the other human nonsense they refused to take seriously. On Earth, things were very different. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the war room deep beneath the surface of Luna Base, looking at screens filled with ship movements and battle plans. She was a hard woman with gray hair and scars on her hands from her days as a fighter pilot. While the Council debated trade regulations, she was preparing for war. "How many ships do we have ready?" she asked Colonel Amy Foster, her ground forces commander. "Every ship we can spare, Admiral. The entire Third Fleet is moving to the Outer Rim. That gives us 47 warships and about 200 smaller vessels." Kate nodded. It was not much compared to the thousands of ships the Council races could field, but humans had something the others did not. They remembered how to fight real wars, not just parade around in fancy uniforms. Commander Ryan, Blake had been promoted after the Discovery mission. Now he led Strike Squadron. 12 of the best pilots in the human fleet. They were training day and night, learning new tactics that would have horrified the peace-loving Council races. "The key is speed and surprise," Ryan told his pilots as they gathered around a holographic display. "We hit hard, we hit fast, and we disappear before they know what happened. No glory charges, no heroic last stands. We kill the enemy, and we live to kill more." His pilots nodded. They were young men and women who had grown up hearing stories of the old wars on Earth. They knew that sometimes good people had to do terrible things to protect the innocent. Back on the alien ship, Dr. Lisa Chen was still working. She had been studying the Devourer technology for months, trying to understand how their enemies thought and fought. What she had learned made her sick to her stomach. They are not just conquerors, she explained to Jake over the communication link. They consume everything, not just food or resources. They eat the life force itself. Entire planets become empty husks when they are finished. Jake was aboard the UES Horizon again, leading a scouting mission near the galaxy's edge. His job was to watch for the first signs of the invasion and send word back to Earth. He did not expect to survive the encounter. "Any idea how to stop them?" he asked. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe. Their ships work like a hive mind. They all think together, share information instantly. But that might also be their weakness. If we could disrupt their communication somehow, what would that take?" "I am working on it, but Jake, it would have to be done at close range. Very close range. Close enough to touch their ships." Jake understood what she meant. It would be a suicide mission, but if it worked, it might save the galaxy. On Nexus Prime, the Council continued their endless meetings. Ambassador Veltar was giving a speech about the importance of peaceful trade when an aide rushed into the chamber. The young Zephyrian was breathing hard and his blue face was pale with fear. "Ambassador," the aide whispered urgently, "the border colonies, they have gone silent." Veltar stopped speaking. Around the circular chamber, representatives from 12 races turned to listen. "What do you mean, silent?" asked General Kethron of the Valaxians. Even though his people were called warriors, they had not fought a real war in centuries. Their idea of combat was formal duels with rules and honor. No communications, no trade ships, no life signs. 3 systems have simply disappeared. Through the chamber erupted in worried voices. Some representatives demanded investigations. Others suggested technical problems with the communication networks. A few wondered if it might be related to the human warning from months before. Veltar raised his hand for silence. "Send a fleet to investigate. A small one. There is probably a simple explanation." Admiral Voreth of the Korathans volunteered. His ships. The Korathans had the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Ships that could travel faster than light, and weapons that could destroy asteroids. Surely they could handle whatever small problem had befallen the border colonies. Meanwhile, Commander Jenny Walsh was piloting a stealth reconnaissance ship at the very edge of Council space. Her mission was dangerous and probably impossible. She had to get close enough to the Devourer fleet to count their ships and study their formations, then escape to report back. What she saw through her ship's cameras made her hands shake. The enemy fleet was enormous, stretching across space like a black cloud. She counted over 10,000 ships, each one the size of a small moon. They moved in perfect formation, like a school of deadly fish swimming through the void. But it was not just their size that terrified her. As she watched, she saw one of the ships approach a small asteroid. The rock was pulled into the ship's hull and simply disappeared. The ship grew slightly larger, feeding on the matter like a living thing. "Dear God," she whispered. "They eat everything." Jenny began transmitting her data back to Earth, knowing it might be the last thing she ever did. But as she prepared to leave, her sensors detected something else. A Council fleet was approaching from the opposite direction, flying in neat formations with their identification signals broadcasting proudly. It was Admiral Voreth's investigation force, flying directly into the Devourer swarm like sheep walking into a pack of wolves. Jenny had a choice to make. She could escape with her valuable intelligence, or she could try to warn the doomed Council ships. Either way, people were going to die. She chose to warn them. "Council vessels, this is UES Shadow, calling on emergency frequency. You are flying into a hostile fleet of unknown size. Turn back immediately. Repeat, turn back now." The response came quickly. "Human vessel, you are in Council space without permission. Leave immediately or we will consider you hostile." Jenny tried again. "Admiral, there are thousands of enemy ships ahead of you. They have already destroyed the border colonies. You need to retreat and call for reinforcements." "We do not take military advice from humans," came the cold reply. "Maintain distance, or we will fire upon you." Jenny watched in horror as the proud council fleet flew forward into certain death. Admiral Voreth's flagship was beautiful, all smooth curves and gleaming metal. His escort vessels moved like dancers, precise and elegant. The devourers fell upon them like hungry animals. The battle lasted less than an hour. The council ships fired their advanced weapons and scored direct hits on the enemy vessels. For a moment, Jenny thought they might actually win. Then she watched as the damaged devourer ships simply grew new parts to replace what had been destroyed, feeding on debris from the battle. One by one, the council ships were overwhelmed. Some tried to escape, but the devourers were faster. Others fought to the last, their crews dying bravely but uselessly. Admiral Voreth's final transmission was broadcast on all frequencies. "Council Command, this is Admiral Voreth. We are under attack by unknown hostiles. Our weapons are ineffective. They are eating our ships. Send everything you have. Send." The transmission ended. Jenny sat alone in her small ship, surrounded by the wreckage of an entire fleet. In the distance, the devourer swarm continued its advance toward council space. They had barely slowed down to destroy Voreth's forces. She turned her ship toward home and pushed the engines to maximum speed. Earth needed to know that the invasion had begun. The galaxy's most advanced military force had been wiped out in minutes. Now it was up to the humans to save everyone, whether the council wanted their help or not. As she raced through space, Jenny could not stop thinking about Admiral Voreth's last words. The enemy was eating their ships, growing stronger with every victory. How could anyone fight an enemy that became more powerful every time you hit it? Behind her, the first wave of devourer scouts began their hunt for the next group of colonies to consume. The galaxy's long peace was about to end in the most terrible way possible. The news of Admiral Voreth's destruction spread through council space like wildfire. 3 more colonies had gone completely silent overnight. Refugee ships packed with terrified civilians began arriving at Nexus Prime, telling stories that sounded like nightmares. Captain Zelmek of the transport ship Harmony's voice was one of the survivors. He stood before the emergency council session with bandages covering half his face and his uniform torn and bloody. "They came without warning," he said in a shaking voice. "Our planetary defenses opened fire as soon as they appeared. Direct hits, with plasma cannons that should have destroyed any ship. But they just absorbed the energy and grew larger." Ambassador Veltar leaned forward in his chair. For the first time in his long life, the Zephyrian looked afraid. "Absorb the energy? That is impossible." "I saw it with my own eyes," Zelmek replied. "Our weapons made them stronger. They pulled my ship into some kind of feeding tube. I barely escaped in a life pod while they were busy consuming the hull." General Kethron of the Valaxians stood up. His people had been warriors once, but that was long ago. Now they wore fancy uniforms and practiced ceremonial sword fights. "We will mobilize the combined fleet. 50,000 ships from all council races. No enemy can stand against such power." Admiral Sulvek of the Dracani shook her head. "Did you not hear what the survivor just said? Our weapons make them stronger. How do we fight an enemy that feeds on our attacks?" The chamber fell silent. For 3,000 years, the Council had solved every problem through superior technology and overwhelming force. Now they faced something that turned their greatest strengths into weaknesses. In the corner of the chamber, a human figure stepped forward. Captain Jake Morrison had been waiting in the observers section, ignored as usual. But now, with panic spreading through the Council, even his presence seemed important. "Honored Council members," Jake said in a clear voice, "Earth offers its assistance in this crisis." Several ambassadors laughed. The idea of primitive humans helping advanced aliens seemed ridiculous, even in their desperate situation. "What could your people possibly offer?" asked Veltar. "You have tiny ships, simple weapons, and no experience fighting a galactic threat." Jake smiled grimly. "We have something you don't. We remember how to fight dirty. Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout Nexus Prime. A communications officer rushed into the chamber with terror written across his face. The Devourer fleet is approaching the Meridian system, he announced. Admiral Kethros has engaged them with the Second Combined Fleet. Every representative in the chamber held their breath. The Second Combined Fleet was the pride of Council, military might. If they could not stop the Devourers, nothing could. The main screen activated, showing a live feed from the battle. What they saw destroyed their last hopes of easy victory. The Council fleet was magnificent. Thousands of ships flying in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with advanced armor and bristling with powerful weapons. They moved like a parade, beautiful and precise. The Devourer fleet looked like a swarm of insects by comparison. Their ships were black and irregular with no apparent design or order. They seemed to flow through space like living creatures instead of machines. Admiral Kethros opened fire first. Beams of pure energy lanced out from his ships, lighting up space with their brilliance. The weapons were designed to destroy entire planets, and they found their targets with perfect accuracy. For a moment, it looked like the Council might win. Several Devourer ships were torn apart by the massive firepower. But then something horrible happened. The damaged ships began to merge with the undamaged ones. Broken hulls flowed like liquid metal, reforming into new shapes. The Devourer fleet actually grew larger and stronger as the battle continued. "Impossible," whispered General Kethran. Admiral Kethros tried different tactics. He split his fleet, attempting to surround the enemy. He used quantum torpedoes, plasma bombs, and gravitational weapons. Nothing worked. Every attack seemed to feed the Devourers, making them more powerful. Within 2 hours, the Second Combined Fleet was gone. Not destroyed, but consumed. Their ships had been pulled apart and absorbed, their crews eaten alive. The Devourer fleet was now twice as large as when the battle began. The Council chamber erupted in panic. Representatives shouted at each other in a dozen different languages. Some demanded immediate evacuation. Others called for surrender. Through the chaos, Jake Morrison's voice cut like a knife. "You tried to fight them like civilized beings," he said. "You used honor and tactics and fair play. That's why you lost." Feltar turned to him with desperate eyes. "Then how do we fight them?" "Like animals," Jake replied. "Like the primitive humans you always said we were." Admiral Kate Sullivan's voice crackled over the communication system. Her fleet had arrived in the outer system, staying carefully out of sensor range. "Captain Morrison, this is Admiral Sullivan. We monitored the battle. The enemy's weakness is not their technology, it's their thinking." "Explain," Jake said. "They fight like a hive mind. Everything is coordinated, everything is planned. They adapt to new tactics, but only after they experience them. We need to hit them with something they have never seen before." Dr. Lisa Chen joined the conversation from her research station. "I've been studying the captured technology. The Devourers share a collective consciousness. They think as one. But that also means they all share the same blind spots." General Kethran stepped closer to the communication screen. "What kind of blind spots?" "They don't understand individual initiative," Lisa explained. "Every decision comes from the top down. They can't handle random chaotic behavior because it doesn't fit their mental patterns." Jake began to understand. Chaos. They can't adapt to pure chaos. Exactly, and humans are very good at chaos. Admiral Sullivan's battle plan was unlike anything the Council had ever heard. Instead of organized formations and coordinated attacks, she proposed complete disorder. Human ships would attack individually, using whatever tactics they could think of. No patterns, no predictability, no rules. "This is madness," protested Admiral Solvek. "How can we coordinate without proper command structure?" "We don't coordinate," replied Sullivan. "That's the point. Every ship fights its own battle, makes its own decisions. The enemy won't be able to predict what we'll do because we don't know ourselves." Commander Ryan Blake's voice joined the discussion. "Strike Squadron is ready, Admiral. We've been practicing. Kamikaze runs with the disruption devices Dr. Chen developed." The word kamikaze sent a chill through the alien representatives. It was a human concept they could barely comprehend. Deliberately sacrificing your life to hurt the enemy. You would die for us? Asked Veltar quietly. We would die for anyone who needs protecting, Ryan answered. That's what humans do. Jake looked around the council chamber at the frightened faces of the galaxy's most advanced beings. For the first time, they were looking at humans not with contempt, but with something like respect. We'll need your ships too, Jake said. Not to fight in formation, but to cause confusion. Every vessel that can fly needs to attack from a different direction at a different time. Make it impossible for them to predict our moves. But our crews have no experience with irregular warfare, protested General Catherine. Then our people will teach them, said Colonel Amy Foster over the communication system. We'll show them how to fight without rules. The plan was desperate and dangerous. It went against every military principle the council races had developed over thousands of years. But as reports came in of more colonies being consumed, they realized they had no choice. Ambassador Veltar stood up slowly. His telepathic abilities let him feel the determination radiating from the human officers. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced, a willingness to face certain death for complete strangers. The Council accepts Earth's assistance, he said formally. What do you need from us? Jake Morrison looked at the most powerful beings in the galaxy and gave them an order that would have been unthinkable just hours before. Follow our lead, he said, and try to keep up. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center of her flagship, the UES Liberty, watching dozens of screens showing the strangest fleet ever assembled. Human warships flew alongside elegant Zephyrian cruisers. Rough Corathan cargo vessels had been fitted with weapons next to sleek Valaxian fighters. It was chaos, exactly what they needed. Status report, Kate ordered. Commander Ryan Blake floated on the main screen from his fighter cockpit. Behind him, his strike squadron was making final preparations. Each pilot had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. 12 birds are loaded with Dr. Chen's disruption devices, Ryan reported. We'll punch through their defenses and plant these things right in their command ships. Once their hive mind goes down, the rest should be easy. Kate nodded, though she knew nothing about this fight would be easy. What about our alien allies? Colonel Amy Foster appeared on another screen. She was aboard a Corathan vessel, training their crew in human combat tactics. It's slow going, Admiral. These people haven't fought a real war in centuries. They keep trying to make plans and follow protocols. Through the screen, Kate could see Corathan officers looking confused as Amy shouted orders at them. The aliens were used to quiet, polite discussions before making any decisions. Amy was teaching them to react instantly to changing situations. Keep working with them, Kate said. We need every ship we can get. Dr. Lisa Chen's voice crackled over the communication system from her research station. Admiral, I've got more information about the Devourer weakness. The disruption devices will work, but only if we hit multiple command ships at exactly the same time. Their network can reroute around single failures. How many targets? Kate asked. At least 6, maybe more, and they have to be hit within seconds of each other, or the hive mind will adapt and protect itself. Kate felt her heart sink. Getting one suicide pilot through the enemy defenses would be nearly impossible. Getting 6 through simultaneously seemed hopeless. Captain Jake Morrison's face appeared on the main screen. He was aboard the UES Horizon, leading a group of mixed human and alien ships on the fleet's left flank. Admiral, we've got movement on long-range sensors. The Devourer fleet is heading straight for Nexus Prime. They'll be here in 6 hours. Kate looked at the tactical display. The enemy fleet had grown to massive proportions, fed by the ships and materials they had consumed. Conservative estimates put their numbers at over 15,000 vessels, each one larger and more dangerous than before. All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan, she broadcast on all frequencies. Today we fight for more than our own survival. We fight for every innocent being in the galaxy. The enemy thinks we're weak because we don't follow their rules. Let's show them what human rules look like. On Nexus Prime, the evacuation was in full chaos. Millions of civilians from dozens of races crowded onto transport ships, trying to escape before the Devourers arrived. But there were not enough ships for everyone. Ambassador Veltar stood in the council chamber, refusing to leave. Around him, his aides packed important documents and cultural artifacts. The Zephyrian leader looked older than his 800 years. "Sir, we must go," urged his assistant. "The human fleet cannot possibly win against such numbers." Feltar shook his head. "If they fail, there will be nowhere to run. The Devourers will consume the entire galaxy. Better to make our stand here." Outside the station's windows, the first human ships were taking their positions. Veltar watched as small human fighters flew in seemingly random patterns, weaving between the larger vessels like insects around flowers. It looked like complete disorder, but somehow it felt purposeful. Commander Jenny Walsh was piloting one of those fighters. Her job was to scout the enemy positions and relay information back to the main fleet. As she flew closer to the approaching Devourer swarm, she felt sick to her stomach. The enemy ships had grown even larger since the last battle. Some were now the size of small planets, their dark hulls covered in strange growths that pulsed with evil light. They moved through space like living creatures, flowing and shifting in patterns that hurt to look at. "Fleet Command, this is Scout 7, Jenny reported. "I count at least 20 command ships in the center of their formation. They're the big ones with all the tentacle things growing out of them." Admiral Sullivan's voice came back immediately. "Copy that, Scout 7. Identify the 6 largest ones and mark them for Strike Squadron." Jenny flew closer, her small ship invisible against the vast enemy fleet. She used her sensors to map the command structure, looking for the ships that seemed to be directing the others. It was dangerous work, but someone had to do it. Back on the Liberty, Admiral Sullivan was coordinating with her alien allies. It was like herding cats trying to get beings from 12 different races to work together without a common language or shared tactics. General Kethran appeared on her screen, looking uncomfortable in his ancient ceremonial armor. "Admiral Sullivan, my ships are in position, but my crews are confused by your orders." "What's confusing about attack whatever looks dangerous?" Kate asked. "We usually have detailed battle plans, formation charts, target assignments, withdrawal procedures. Your strategy seems to be make it up as you go along." "That's exactly right, General. The enemy can't predict what we'll do if we don't know ourselves." Dr. Chen's excited voice broke into the conversation. "Admiral, I've got it. I know how to make this work." "Tell me," Kate said. "The disruption devices don't have to be delivered by suicide pilots. If we can get them close enough to the command ships, they can be triggered remotely. The pilots might actually survive this." Commander Blake's voice came over the radio from his fighter. "Doc, with all due respect, we're still talking about flying straight into the biggest concentration of enemy firepower in the galaxy. Survival isn't really part of the plan." "Maybe not," Lisa replied. "But now you have a chance. The remote triggers will work from about 50 kilometers away. You can fire the devices like missiles and get out before they explode." Kate felt a small surge of hope. 50 kilometers was still dangerously close, but it was better than flying directly into the enemy ships. All Strike Squadron pilots did. "You copy that?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," came 12 voices in response. Even with the improved odds, they all knew most of them would not be coming home. The Devourer fleet was getting closer. On her screens, Kate could see the edge of their formation beginning to engage the outer defense platforms around Nexus Prime. The platform's weapons fired uselessly at the approaching ships, their energy blasts absorbed and converted into more hull material. "All ships prepare for battle," Kate ordered. "Remember, no formations, no predictable patterns. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and keep them guessing." Captain Morrison's voice came over the radio from the horizon. "Admiral, we're picking up some kind of signal from the enemy fleet. It sounds like they're trying to communicate." "Put it through," Kate said. The voice that filled the command center was like nothing any human had ever heard. It was the sound of a million creatures speaking in perfect unison, cold and emotionless and hungry. "Inferior species," the voice said. "You will be consumed. Your resistance feeds us. Your weapons make us stronger. Submit now and your death will be swift." Kate looked around her command center at the faces of her crew. They were scared, she could see that. But they were also angry. Humans did not respond well to threats. Unknown. Vessel Kate broadcast back. "This is Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Terran Defense Forces. We have a message for you too." She paused, thinking of all the innocent beings who had already died, all the worlds that had been consumed, all the children who would never grow up if the Devourers won. "Go to hell," she said simply. The battle for the galaxy was about to begin. The Battle of Nexus Prime began with chaos. Admiral Kate Sullivan's mixed fleet attacked from every direction at once, with no plan except to confuse and overwhelm the enemy. Human fighters dove through formations of massive Devourer ships while alien cruisers fired wildly from impossible angles. The Devourers had never faced anything like it. Their hive mind tried to process the random attacks, looking for patterns that did not exist. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they hesitated. Commander Ryan Blake led Strike Squadron through the center of the enemy formation. Behind him, 11 other pilots followed in loose formation, each one carrying the devices that could save the galaxy. "Remember," Ryan called over the radio, "we need to hit all 6 command ships at the same time. Wait for my signal, then let them fly." The Devourer ships opened fire with weapons that could melt asteroids. Beams of dark energy lanced through space, missing the wildly maneuvering human fighters by meters. The enemy was used to fighting predictable opponents who flew in straight lines and followed military doctrine. Lieutenant Mike Davis was the first to reach his target. His fighter screamed past defensive guns that could not track his erratic flight path. "Target 1 in range," he reported. "Device ready for launch." One by one, the other pilots reached their assigned command ships. The Devourer fleet was enormous, but their command vessels were clearly marked by the strange growths covering their hulls, and the way smaller ships clustered around them like insects around a queen. "All pilots report ready," came the voices, over the radio. Ryan looked at his target through his cockpit window. The command ship was larger than any building on Earth, its black surface writhing with alien technology. He thought about his sister back home, about the children playing in Earth's parks, about all the innocent people depending on him. "Fire everything," he ordered. 12 devices shot out from the human fighters, racing toward their targets on trails of blue fire. The Devourers tried to intercept them, but the missiles were too small and too fast. Within seconds, all 6 primary command ships were hit. Dr. Lisa Chen's disruption technology worked better than anyone had hoped. The devices sent out waves of interference that crashed through the Devourer network like a virus. The hive mind, which had controlled millions of ships across the galaxy, suddenly went silent. The effect was immediate and terrible. Devourer ships began firing on each other, their individual crews confused and panicked without the guiding voice in their heads. Some vessels simply stopped moving, drifting helplessly through space. Others exploded as their alien technology overloaded without proper coordination. "It's working," shouted Jenny Walsh from her scout ship. "The enemy fleet is falling apart," but the celebration was premature. The largest command ship, a massive creature the size of a small moon, was still functioning. It had somehow resisted the disruption and was now trying to re-establish control over the scattered fleet. Captain Jake Morrison saw it happening on his sensors. "Admiral Sullivan, we've got a problem. One of the big ones is still active. It's starting to pull the fleet back together." Kate looked at her tactical display with growing alarm. The surviving command ship was indeed reasserting control, its signals reaching out to the confused Devourer vessels. If it succeeded in repairing the network, all their sacrifice would be for nothing. "Strike Squadron, we need another run," she ordered. "Negative, Admiral," came Ryan's voice. "We're out of devices. That was our only shot." Kate felt despair creeping into her heart. They had come so close to victory, only to fail at the last moment. Around Nexus Prime, the Devourer ships were beginning to move in coordination again, their hunger turning toward the space station where millions of civilians waited helplessly. Then Captain Morrison's voice cut through the despair like a knife. "All ships, this is Captain Morrison. I'm making a run on the big command ship. Any vessel that wants to follow me, form up on my position." Kate realized what he was planning. "Jake, no. Your ship doesn't have the firepower to damage that thing." "Maybe not," Jake replied. "But I've got something better. I've got a full cargo hold of antimatter torpedoes and a reactor that can overload on command. He was planning to ram the command ship and detonate his entire vessel. It was madness, but it might work. Count me in, said Commander Blake. Strike Squadron, anyone who's still alive, follow Captain Morrison. The horizon is with you, came other voices. Ships from across the mixed fleet began converging on Morrison's position. Humans, Zephyrians, Corathans, Valaxians, all flying together towards certain death. Ambassador Veltar watched from Nexus Prime as dozens of ships formed up behind the human captain. His telepathic abilities let him feel their emotions. And what he sensed amazed him. These beings were not driven by rage or bloodlust. They were filled with love for people they had never met and worlds they would never see. They are going to die for us, he whispered to his aide. These humans are going to die for complete strangers. The final charge began with Jake Morrison's ship leading the way. The UES Horizon, which had discovered the first warning of the Devourer threat, now flew directly into the heart of the enemy formation. Behind it came every ship that could still move, their crews singing battle songs in a dozen different languages. The massive command ship turned all its weapons on the approaching fleet. Beams of dark energy tore through the attackers, destroying ship after ship. But for every vessel that died, 2 more took its place. The survivors flew through the debris of their fallen comrades, never slowing, never stopping. Jake Morrison's ship reached the command vessel's hull with half his crew, dead and his engines failing. He looked around his ruined bridge at the faces of his surviving officers. Dr. Lisa Chen was there, having insisted on staying to help coordinate the final attack. It's been an honor serving with you all, Jake said quietly. The honor was ours, Captain, Lisa replied. Jake pressed the button that would overload his reactor. The UES Horizon disappeared in a flash of light that could be seen from 100 light-years away. The explosion tore through the command ship's hull, ripping apart the alien technology that had controlled the Devourer fleet. The hive mind collapsed completely. Across the galaxy, Devourer ships went silent and dead. The threat that had consumed dozens of civilizations was ended by a handful of humans who chose to die for others. In the aftermath, the surviving ships of the galaxy gathered around Nexus Prime. The station's lights seemed brighter somehow, as if the darkness had been driven away forever. Admiral Sullivan stood before the Galactic Council in the same chamber where humans had been rejected so many times before. But now the alien representatives looked at her with something they had never shown humanity before: respect. The Council hereby offers full membership to the human race, announced Ambassador Veltar. Furthermore, we wish to offer Admiral Sullivan the position of Supreme Commander of all Galactic Defense Forces. Kate nodded acceptance, but her thoughts were with the crews who would never see this moment. Jake Morrison, Ryan Blake, and hundreds of others had given their lives to save people who had once called them primitive and worthless. We accept, she said simply. But we want one thing in return. Name it, said Veltar. We want a memorial, built here on Nexus Prime. A memorial to everyone who died fighting the Devourers, human and alien alike. And we want it to carry a message. What message? Asked General Kethron. Kate looked around the chamber at the representatives of 12 races, all of them now united in ways they had never been before. They were told they were too primitive to join us, she said, repeating the words that had been used against humanity for so long. Instead, they proved too mighty to ignore. The memorial was built exactly as Admiral Sullivan requested. It stood in the center of Nexus Prime, visible to everyone who visited the station. Beings from across the galaxy came to read the names of the fallen and to remember the day when primitive humans taught the galaxy the true meaning of courage. The inscription at the base was simple. They died for strangers, and in doing so, became legends. Humanity had finally taken its place among the stars, not through politics or technology, but through the oldest human virtue of all, the willingness to sacrifice everything for others. The galaxy would never underestimate them again.